Dr. Oba Tashaka Show. Free your mind, and the rest will follow. A show for all who are on the journey to discover the truths about their identity, history, culture, politics, spirituality, and family relationships. This is a show for the Black Freedom Movement and the Black Power generation and the hip-hop generation, including Black Lives Matter and associate activists, all of whom are seeking change. Dr. Oba Tashaka and his guests are dropping knowledge and insight from his successful organizing, research, writings, and innovative thoughts, the best of which have piped into God's mind to lift you up higher and higher. To the bosses, OGs, rappers, influencers, and those looking to evolve from the constraints of misinformation and miseducation to build a foundation for personal growth, love, and mental freedom. Check out the wisdom of the OR. Yeah, that's the original revolutionary, Oba T, who inspired 1 million black men with his rousing speech at the Million Man March, and who continues to fight, write, and speak the truth. Dr. Oba Tashaka is one of the deepest deep thinkers in the world today. A quote by Dr. Asa Hilliard. Dr. Oba Tashaka, then Bill Bradley, was the best leader organizer in the Congress of Racial Equality, CORE. An endorsement from Dr. George Wiley, Associate Director of National CORE and the best organizer blacks produced in the 1970s as the organizer of the National Welfare Rights Organization. The Dr. Oba Tashaka Show. Free your mind, and the rest will follow.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? We're having a little problem hooking up our guest here, and hopefully he can find his way on to the show. That's why we're late. You know, I'm usually not late. I want to say
It's not. His phone number is 78.
I want to say good morning to Sister Robin, to Brother Wolf Manlu, who I missed last week, Sister Mildred Parks, Brother Ugawa. Let's see if we got anybody else here that's new. Gloria Briscoe. The Devil's Advocate of Thinking. That's a good one. Let's see, who else? And then Rasha Mella, Worry Smith, Ua Kata. Let's see who else we have here. Yeah, that's it. I see some new faces or new names here. How's everybody doing? So it's good to have you back on the show. Hopefully my guests can get plugged in. The last 2 weeks, these shows have been on COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program. And this is part 3. And while the title for the show is COINTELPRO and Low Intensity Operations, the Art of Detecting Agents, this show will focus heavily on low intensity operations that most of you know nothing about. Those of you that do, type in on the side. Some of you have been alerted to it by me on this show before, but those that you that know anything about low intensity operations, make a comment up there with your name saying I know about it or something like that. So this show is going to focus on that, but in a different way than you normally expect. When we're able to hook in our guest, if we're able to, Stadi Kadiri, I'll introduce him. So the last two shows have focused on two components of COINTELPRO counterintelligence program. One component was to explain its aims and objectives. And that came from the standpoint of experience. So this isn't an academic discussion, even though we need to know the stuff on its general overview and its aims and objectives. I'm coming from somebody that has experienced COINTELPRO on a number of different levels, and then I'm also looking at the information on COINTELPRO. So that is what this first show is about. The second show focused on the Deacons of Defense and Justice, and that was to show you how you could defeat COINTELPRO without actually having to deal with it. And there aren't too many groups that have that record. So we went into how culture was the basis for defeating that measure. Yeah, so this show today is going to draw on the practical experience of Pan-African People's Organization, known as PAPO, that is the successor organization to the San Francisco Freedom Movement, the Congress of Racial Equality. And so we're going to be dealing with a specific case study that we've dealt with that deals specifically with low intensity operations. And you'll see what this is to a point. This, as we draw on this, we're looking at the most sophisticated methods that are used by mainly the CIA against organizations. And most of you think, well, that would be outside the country. Last show, I pointed out that under Reagan, CIA was given authority to operate in the country, but it's been operating before and it's operating now. And I'm going to show you some markers on how you can know when the CIA is in the picture. Sometimes the FBI and CIA are working together, and you can tell it by the way in which they move. But this particular case, the low intensity operations is a method used against Black liberation movements, but it was created particularly to go against national liberation movements in the world. And it was created by the British and refined by the Americans. And I've discussed this in a previous show on low intensity operations. Well, I didn't go into detail on low intensity operations, but I gave you the name of the author of this, General Kitson, and his book, Low Intensity and Peacekeeping Operations. And this was refined to operate in the United States. So the purpose of this show is not to go into detail on low intensity operations. I really want to say this. I got years of experience in this, and it's in some ways, it's not the greatest thing to just present this to people who are never going to use it. I'm practical. And so the most important thing about this is the people who are in the field organizing, they're the ones that really need this. This is not something that is very useful for just academic discourse because some blood gets shed for this. I've shed blood on this, you know what I mean? And I've shed some blood. And so there's some serious lessons that we learn. And so if it's just to sit back and say, oh, this is wonderful, you know, you're really missing the point. The point of this is to be able to use it in the various operations, organizations that people are carrying out in our communities. And this is something to be used around the world, not just in this country. So that's the frustrating part of presenting this because this is something that's for use, you know, not just to gas off of. And most of us are into woe is me. So usually this discussion is about how they destroyed this group, killed this person, exiled that person. And while that is certainly what these are designed to do, and what you'll see with low intensity operations is that it is designed to do much more than that. To understand this particular campaign, low intensity operations, you need to understand the organization that it was carried out against. It's been carried out against a number of organizations. I doubt if many of them could come on to say anything about it because usually when they run this on you, you're finished. If you don't know your stuff, you're finished. I'm literally telling you this because this makes COINTELPRO look like a picnic compared to this. And one of the reasons why Kitson developed low intensity operations is because COINTELPRO took a long time to shut groups down. And yeah, they were able in the end to kill some leaders and break up some groups, but it took a lot of time to do that. And in some cases, they didn't succeed in doing that. And in other cases, while someone like King was targeted by COINTELPRO, as I pointed out last week, he was taken out by military intelligence at the orders of the highest political officer in the US, because that's the only one that could order the military to carry out a hit on him. And last week, I showed you this book, An Act of State by William Pepper, that documents this in great detail. So if somebody thinks that I'm smoking, blowing smoke, it's no joke. So sometimes you'll have a COINTELPRO operation that was being run on King for years, but then when it comes to finishing you, in this particular case, it was such a big target, the military was given that objective. And this, read the book, and it's very detailed with the mafia's backup. So to understand low intensity and its operations, then it's best to look at how it was run. And that's basically how I've learned my stuff. I'm an organic scholar. I come out of battles, and then I've done my homework in the course of that. And in the case of low intensity operations, I had studied it before it hit us because I had waited on experience. It would have done no good because it's low intensity. That means it, from a distance, it's not seen. And so that is the key thing about low intensity operations. And particularly, it's not seen.
Yeah.
Okay, Stotty, can you talk?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, we got it.
Fine. What do you know? Thank the youth.
Yeah,
Saved you,
13
brother.
years old.
14.
14.
14. You remember the school? You remember our school?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right on. Okay, we have on now the person that we were having trouble hooking up. Our school, the African Children's Advanced Learning Center, that's been in operation since 1972. It's a 14-year-old young lady who hooked this brother up here because his thing wasn't working. So this is Ustadi Kadiri right here, who is my partner in this discussion. And so I was saying that we're going to have to understand Pan-African People's Organization to understand how this works. But before getting into that, then let me introduce our guest here, Brother Ustadi Kadiri. How you doing, Ustadi?
I'm doing good. Thank you, sir.
Right on. Ustadi and I have been associates in the Black Liberation Movement for about 50 years. And he's a former student of mine. He's about, how old are you, Ustadi?
78.
Yeah, so he's 6 years younger than me, or 5 years younger than me. He was a student of mine at San Francisco State, and he then teamed up with another buddy of his who's been active in the organization just as long, Abidi Mtambuzi, and they ran both the student organization, which was the Black Student Union, changed into the Pan-African Student Union. Ustadi was chair of that. And then his friend Abidi eventually got elected head of Associated Students. So they were students then, but older students in their late 20s, I think. And they joined Pan-African People's Organization. And the reason we're having Brother Ustadi on is that he played a very important role in the low intensity operations that we're going to discuss today, and others who helped him out. And so we're going to be discussing that. So what I want to say about Brother Ustadi is he's a brother of multiple skills. He's a mathematician. And I think a lot of your mathematics was taught to you by Bomani Sawatu. Is that right?
100%.
Bomani
That's right.
Sawatu.
Out of San Francisco State.
Bomani Sawatu was a member of PAPO, and he was a mathematical genius and is now using his math to work in the computer industry if he's not retired. So he taught Ustadi math. My first wife, he could take her through stuff and she was sharp. So he was a master at this. But Ustadi's a mathematician and he's used his mathematical skills in our school. But in addition to that, he's a master printer. He's a master mechanic. But most important, he's a master organizer. And he's out in the streets organizing regularly. And he's a master psychologist of black people. And he does the kind of psychology on you that will fool you. You know, that's so there's some people who will think, oh, yeah, this guy don't know nothing. And you'll see one of the reasons why we asked him to take on this assignment when it came to low intensity operations. Ustadi is also a very kind person that looks out for his community. And some of our elders, when they get ill, Ustadi's the one who has been taking care of them, bringing them to the hospital, looking after them. And he's one of the reasons why our school, the African Children's Advanced Learning Center, has been standing all these years. Him, his buddy, Abidi Mtambuzi, Shapaza Sadifu, and a few others. But they have been the mainstay of this school. So I wanted to study on because he plays an important part in this. So you got anything to say? Introduce yourself, Ustadi. Anything else?
Yes, thank you, Brother Shaka. What Brother Shaka left out was that he's the one that brought the conscience to me, Thabiti Shapada. He's the one that gave us our name back in '73. And when we joined Papo, me, Thabiti Shapada, and majority of the brothers, we had just got out of the military. We've been out of the military for a while. But we came to San Francisco State with the Veteran Special Mission Program. And we really got all our consciousness and our names from Brother Obati Shaka. So we have to give credit where credit is due. So when we came, we took one of his classes, and then we got let me see, how can I say, we got politicized. So that's where the consciousness come from. It wasn't overnight. Let's say that. It was some intensive. It was low intensive 6 or 7 months or 8 months of a training before we got to where we were.
Yeah, and one of the things we want to do in this show is to show the connection between consciousness and your ability to handle infiltration, because this is the first two shows were on COINTELPRO, but this is on the more advanced stuff here. And so would you say that that consciousness, along with what it encouraged you to do, work in your community, plays any role in you doing 50 years of this work?
Oh yeah, that's once you learn principles and what's your destiny or what's your purpose in life or what you feel is right, then that becomes your life work. That's what I would say. It's your life work. It's not. It's nothing. If you in it, it's nothing you can just turn off and on. Either you in it or you out of it. So with the consciousness training that we got through Popo, then we didn't have no other choice. It wasn't no quitting. It wasn't no getting out. You know, that's the most important thing. It's a way of life. And when it becomes a way of life, it becomes easier for you. So you don't have to worry about reputation because your reputation gonna precede you.
Oh, well put. Well put. Yeah, I can say the same thing is true for me. It's the consciousness and then the involvement in movement activity. The involvement led to my consciousness, but then the continual involvement in the consciousness is what's kept me going. And one of the key things about the Pan-African Peoples Organization is that we recruited people of diverse backgrounds, but all of them with brains. And so the sixfold stages to mental freedom, which is what they went through in they call it orientation, about 8 months. That's what we're going to do for the webinar for a year, twice a month. That was to get your identity together. Ustadi's friend, Thabiti, makes the comment that when he came into Papo, he knew what he was, he knew his skills and stuff. He didn't know who he was,
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, and he calls this process immersion. And by that, he meant because his friend, Thabiti, who will be on some other shows, Thabiti lived in our headquarters and then worked in the programs and then was active at San Francisco State and had been a straight A student coming into college. And just recently told me about a year ago, Ustadi would know this because they're buddies, that he came to San Francisco State to get into the space program until he got into Black studies and he got brought down to Earth. And he ended up with an Earth landing.
You're right about that. You're definitely right. He was a space cadet. He's still like what you call that thing? Space something. I don't know what it is, but that's his thing. But and see, I think the key point is already in you, but it has to be brought out of you. And that's what education is, to bring it out. So the
Exactly.
goodness is already there, but the consciousness, like when I was in school, I didn't have no consciousness. It was just do whatever, follow whoever you want to follow. And even before I came to Papo, when we was talking, it was follow whoever you need to follow, whoever was leading. And most time we have consciousness, but sometimes we slip off into darkness, and we'll be following something that's not to the best interest of African people. And once you start figuring out who you are, then you would always do what's best for African people.
Yeah, that's well put, Ustadi. Yeah, very true. And so you're going to see that consciousness is really key to our ability to handle a lot of things. And in this particular case, this show is focused on intelligence operations. In this case, low intensity, which is the roughest, toughest stuff you go up against. It wasn't for us because we had some conscious people. That's the key to that. But that's the key to your life. It's the key to your health. It's a key to your happiness. You know what I mean? It gives you a sense of purpose in your life. So well put, Ustadi. Well put.
And you know, the other side of that coin is one thing to have a theory, but your theory really come out of your practice. And we had a lot of practice at Papo, especially with the African Liberation Support Committee, then Pan African Secretariat, the school. So we had a lot of practice. So when you got the practice going, and when somebody come, they stand out like a sore thumb, like a
Mhm.
wheel that's squeaking and needs some oil. But if you haven't
Well,
have that practice along with that theory, then you won't even hear the squeaking wheel.
yeah, exactly. And that's the
That's my
point I was
position.
making in the beginning. Y'all watch this, but if you're not applying this, well, you're missing the main point. This is application here, because the only way you know something in the African American context is to be it. Know the truth, be the truth. You know what I mean? You got to live it. You know what I mean? I know some of you are, but this particular stuff right here, this ain't just academic. Academic's important. You need to study this, but you need to practice it. So today's
Right.
show draw on the practical experience of Papo, which was the successor organization of the Congress of Racial Equality. And it's going to be dealing with, in core, we dealt with previously our success in defeating the effort of COINTELPRO to identify, infiltrate our organization, and we explained how. But this show today is going to focus on the more sophisticated stuff. And with the exception of one person's name, all other names will fit the real person. But the one that did the most damage, we're not using the person's real name. That person we've renamed. Ustadi had cross and I put double on it. Double cross. So when we refer to this person who was the main actor, we're going to call him double cross. And I think you're all smart enough to realize why I'm doing this. So don't be asking. You know what I mean? Use your common sense, that mother wit that you were born with. In the first of the series, I drew from several examples, San Francisco Core, Black Panther Party, to show the way you could set yourself up so that you could defeat it, and the way in which you could set yourself up to be defeated. And so go back and look at those, because part of the intelligence agency's ability is to work on your weaknesses, and we all got them, so do you cover them. In the second show, I drew on the Deacons for Defense and Justice to give practical examples of how a movement that was organized around self-defense could actually defeat COINTELPRO without ever dealing with it, by keeping it out of its group. So this was extremely important. Stay on the screen there, Scotty. Today's show is going to draw on the experience of PAPO, Pan-African People's Organization, and we're going to look at the most sophisticated method used by the intelligence operations in this country and abroad against the Black liberation movement and against liberation movements abroad in Vietnam and in other places, low intensity operations, which I started talking about before I introduced Ustadi. So Pan-African People's Organization was targeted for the low intensity operations attack. And so to understand the attack, we're going to have to understand more about the organization, and then be able to identify what features of the organization's program drew the attention of the CIA. Because myself, I had already come under attack by the FBI, 2 assassination attempts by that time, and 2 attempts, well, 1 attempt to take my job. And I was working at State at this time, because this is the mid-70s. So I was a lecturer, but they were writing me up at this time to deny me tenure. And that was a COINTELPRO move. So I faced that and had studied that. Ustadi and the other people, they were new members in the organization, and they're facing this coming straight out of orientation, 8 months of transformation of consciousness. In my case, the attacks were directed against me because I led the only successful Black Power, Black Freedom movement in the country in the 60s in the North. And so they had tagged me, but they tagged me after we won. So what's that saying? And then they took a job as a public school teacher away from me because I could have won that, but the Spirit told me no, and the Spirit was right because I got a job at state. Uh, that was better than teaching in Marin because I'm not really a junior high school teacher. My stuff is for older people. So Ustadi and I are going to talk about the history, aims, and objectives of the Pan-African Peoples Organization, and why would some of those aims and objectives and programs make us targets for low-intensity operations. I want to start this by saying that as we had the victories in the San Francisco Freedom Movement in '65, we had won our battles, and I had tried to turn National Corps into a Pan-African nationalist organization, succeeded at the National Convention, and then it was reversed. And so then I make the decision to move out of Corps to form a new organization. It was then called the Afro-American Institute, later Pan-African Peoples Organization. My primary inspiration was Marcus Garvey. And from Garvey, as I underwent the awakening that Ustadi and them experienced in the organization, because we reproduced that 6-fold stages to mental freedom as a part of the orientation for people who are coming into the organization. We didn't do that in Corps because we're building a cadre organization that is centered around institution building. The Black Freedom Movement was into mass movement. Mass movements only last so long. And so we wanted to build up thing. So Garvey was a major inspiration. His emphasis on African unity, though he never used the word Pan-Africanism, as a practicing Pan-Africanist, his focus on African identity, and his special focus on economic self-reliance, which Papo is centered on. We finance our own stuff. And so the founders of Papo were supporters of the San Francisco Freedom Movement. So we had Black businesses, Black social clubs, Black civil rights groups, the Black newspaper, the Sun Reporter, and others, Marcus Bookstore, and others. They financed us for a year. That was to prove the Black community would finance a Black organization. So in the beginning, our first program that we carried out, I've mentioned this before, but I need to attribute this to its source, was the creation of the Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey housing units that became a cooperative a few years after they were built, 211 units of housing. And so it's dedicated to Garvey and King, especially if the spirit of Garvey is up in there. The board of directors for this housing unit was board of directors of the Afro-American Institute that would later become the Pan-African Peoples Organization. So this is a good way to kick a group off, a major economic development program that benefited the Black community. Ustadi, let's talk about what Papo was about, its aims, objectives, some of the programs that Papo carried out.
Well, when I came in, we was doing African Liberation Support Committee. We was doing African Liberation Day. I think that was let me how can I put it? That was the meat of organizing because we had did a Juneteenth, but that was a small thing. But when we did African Liberation Support Committee and we being a part of it, and we running security, and we also running the booths and things of that nature, the programs, then that and working with other organizations, I think that was my initial hands-on dealing with the community. That was one of the biggest ones, I think, because I missed the school aspect of it when in '72 when you got the 5,000 students out to protest against not having enough Black in San Francisco teaching. That was my initial one, and from the next I guess the next next, that was 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78. All African Liberation Day aspect of it. When Brother Paul Bomani, or excuse me, not Brother Paul Bomani, let me clarify that statement. The ambassador from Tanzania, Paul Bomani, came, and I drove him around to different places. And then Mwalimu Julius Nyerere came to town. Called Paul Bomani came first to set the way, and that was the only time that I really wish when we was at the San Francisco City Hall Rotunda, and that was the only time I wish I was in the military, because they played the national anthem for Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, president of Tanzania. He came out. They played, and the color guards came out. Two black brothers with the flag. It made me feel so proud. I think that was 74, somewhere in there. And from then on, it was on. I mean, we had speakers. We had speakers. We used to have Dr. Clark, Van Sertima, Dr. Ben, Queen Mother Moore. We used to do speaking bureaus, and I had the opportunity to drive all of them around. And it just so happens that one of my friends was in that other type of life, had a limo, and we would pick them up in the limo. That was we gave first class with a little community organizer within that. But that was wonderful. I really didn't have to listen too much to Dr. Clark when he came and gave his speeches, because just to drive him around, that was something. To drive Dr. Ben, at that time, Dr. Ben was also the ambassador to Papua New Guinea, and I would have to drop him at the hotel so he could always be close to a phone. But anyway, it was that's how we got our feet wet with not no small rats. So we had professionals that we was turned on to. So with the amount of people, with ALD and all of that, and then the break, it's that was, and then the school, we had the preschool Injiani and Umani, in Injiani and Umbani on the road home for the preschool, and then the Pan African Center for Progressive Education was the junior high. We had up to 90 students. It was a good, and also taught. So it was a time that you had your theory, but now you got to go out and prove yourself, and you can get bit by just being around your people. And we also had the community, and so there was a that to me, I would say that was a highlight of my life back in the days. It was beautiful, you know. The only thing I hate now, out of all the people, even the brothers from ZANU that came, almost everybody from Independence that was fighting, especially ZANU, we had a real good a hookup with them. Although it was Mozambique, Angola, and Namibia was fighting for independence, and don't forget Guinea and the Cape Verde Islands. Um, no, Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde Islands. But it was a good time. It was a good time. We was there, but now it's time to liberate here in the United States. But those just some of the programs. Probably got missed some, but those just some that I have fond memories, especially going to Will Ossery. He had Black Montage then on KDIA, and taking all of them to his show, and he was a professional when it come down to interviewing. He did Paul Bomani. I think he interviewed Paul Bomani for about 40 minutes, and he never saw him. Man, he was so smooth. I was really impressed with him. Brother Will Lawson, Black Montage. But anyway, those are just some of the programs that I could think of right off the top. So we had hands on, real seriously hands on. Not to mention the split that we had with in the Pan African Secretariat. So it's a struggle. Life is a struggle, but it's a beautiful struggle once you know who you are and where you're going. And one of the things, I think the most important thing is that what we have to look at is one of the 10 virtues say I must distinguish the real from the unreal. And right now, some people don't know because of this what we're looking at now, this this program to give you too many commercials and no substance.
Yeah, so that's a good summary. Overall, Papa was formed in '66, and we did a variety of things, starting with building this housing complex. And then we opened a headquarters because as an institution,
Oh yeah.
you need a headquarters to operate out of. And we bought our own headquarters, and that was called the Malcolm X Unity House, 5,800 square foot Victorian that had been rehabbed. And so we ran programs through that. And so our first 2 years, we operated out of a 2-year plan. And that 2-year plan included a food program. A woman on one side, dark complexion, and then a little girl on another. That was my first wife, Anasa Tashaka, and then another member. That food program went for 2 years, 35,000 plates of food for 25 cents a plate. So, and that was run by my first wife, Anasa Tashaka. Sisters in the organization did the cooking. The brothers bought the food, served it, cleaned the place up. And then we had a free clothing program that would provide clothing to people. And then we put out a booklet called Black Man Speaks.
Right. Yeah, right.
That was taken off because Garvey had a book called Black Man Speaks. And then later we would put together a newspaper called The African Awakener. And we had our own printing press, this here. And it's Scotty, because he's a master printer. We actually bought a press, and he taught a brother named Ajili Hodari how to print, and they put that newspaper out. And that became a major arm for educating the Black community on various things we were doing. We, as a part of the 2-year plan, as Ustadi said, we set up a Black school, the Pan-African Center for Progressive Education, which is now the African Children's Advanced Learning Center. And for a year, we planned it. We had community involvement. And then after that, we pulled 4,500 Black kids out of the public schools to march in support of that, and then set that up. And Ustadi and Thabiti, Shapaza, and others have kept this school going since 1972. And it's produced a whole lot of beauty. And Ustadi could go into that in a minute. So that was, and then we did anti-police work against police violence and stuff like that. And then the African liberation support work, that was a part of a national movement around the country, starting in Washington, D.C., but with various places in the country carrying this out, where we every year in May, which had been designated by the African Union, which was then called another name, the Organization of African Unity, to rally Africans around the world in support of, in this case, liberation movements that were still fighting for liberation. So we raised money, and we sent clothes and material to these groups. And so when Ustadi was saying that's when he started, then this picture here of African Liberation Day, 29,000 people. We had the largest demonstrations in the country after the first demonstration on African Liberation Day. And then one of the most important speakers we had, you'll see a person with his hand raised there. It's hard to see the picture. It's a poor picture, but it's C.L.R. James.
Yeah,
who was
C.L.R. James.
Of the Pan-African movement. And he stayed at my house for a week, and Thabiti and myself and some others and Papa took him out to dinner, and we had a chance to talk. This is one of the founders of the Pan-African movement, the author of Black Jacobin. So this is one of the reasons we would attract the CIA's attention, is our effective work in Africa and our support for African movements for liberation. And when Scotty referred to driving around. See on the top here, it says Tanzanian Ambassador Bomati, Paul Bomati is his name. And this Wakener is in 1974. He's at our headquarters here. And to the side of him, you'll see a sister with something around her head. That's Ella Hill Hutt, the mother of San Francisco Freedom Movement. And then a young kid who was at the meeting to receive Paul Bomani, and then my former wife, Anasa Tashaka, and that's me on the side. And then the woman with her head facing you is my mother. But the point is, we had already sent a work team to Tanzania in 1973 for 3 months, worked in the Ujamaa villages. Then in 77, met with Nyerere to deliver to him a film of the African Liberation Support work, but to get a base in Tanzania. We set up a chapter, a Pan-African People's Organization in Tanzania.
Yeah.
Brother Simba Tayari was in charge of it. So the international work was important. And then there was other work that we were doing as well around the country. We formed a group called the Pan-African Secretariat, which was a national organization. And then later, we played a role in forming I was one of the 4 representing Pan-African People's Organization, 4 organizers of the National Black United Front. Because our mission has been, our organization doesn't come first, we got to build power among our people. So this is just some of the work we were doing. And this work would attract the attention of the intelligence agencies because it was effective work. And in the case of establishing a relationship with the government of Tanzania, that was the most advanced government in Africa, in the United States,
Right.
in Africa at that time, because Nyerere had the best program for empowering Africans around Ujamaa, sharing, economic development. And he was not the favorite of the West. And so I was privileged to chair the political committee to the 6th Pan-African Congress. Another reason that they would target us. And this is, you see this in the intro to the show. That's me on the side where my finger is, that's Amiri Baraka. And on the other side is a guy named Owusu Sadakawa. This was a debate we had at the 6th Pan-African Congress. So we were major organizers of the 6th Pan-African Congress in charge of the Western region. And I ended up chairing the political committee to the 6th Pan-African Congress in North America. Our delegation was the largest from the United States. CIA didn't like that. I can tell you there was CIA activity in Tanzania and in fact, they ended up arresting most of the African Americans just before the 6th Pan-African Congress, charging them with planning the assassination of the president of Tanzania, which was completely untrue. And when the 6th Pan-African Congress was over, the president found out that this was not true. He apologized to the African Americans, but many of them ended up leaving the country after that. And it had been a tremendous presence of African Americans in Tanzania to build up the country. So a combination of these circumstances would help explain why we could be the targets of low intensity operations. What would be used against us would be the Symbionese Liberation Army. That organization was the organization that was used to against us through, to attack us in low intensity operations. COINTELPRO is set up to kill leaders, imprison people, exile people, discredit people, impoverish people. That's what it's designed to do. And if they can, break up an organization. But in a nutshell, I'm going to tell you the difference between low intensity operations and COINTELPRO. It's like Mickey Mouse and a lion. You know, it's like serious and not so serious. COINTELPRO is serious, but low intensity is a level higher. What's the big difference? The big difference is when they stick low intensity on you, they are out to wipe your organization out. That means kill everybody in it. Y'all listening? And a number of groups have been taken out this way. And in fact, during this time in which we were facing this, some small groups around the country were being taken out. And most people didn't even know about it because the objective of low intensity is to prevent a group from becoming large, to prevent it from spreading. Take it out before it can get off the ground. Because we were off the ground, we were local, and getting a national presence and international was to take us out. Take the head out, stop the whole thing. So this is the distinction between low intensity and COINTELPRO. There's a lot to low intensity. I'm not going into it. I've covered a little bit of it before. If you read my books, Art of Leadership, particularly Volume 2, there's a detailed description of this. This book's out of print right now, but there's a detailed description of this. And I had trained myself in only because I was working in the UK. Had I not been working in the UK, I would not have known about this because that's where this program was set up. So this also shows the value of international work and how it connects to local and national work. So the Symbionese Liberation Army would be used as a group that would be thrown against our organization, Pan-African People's Organization. And the Symbionese Liberation Army was a group collectively led by a black person called Donald DeFreeze, D-E-F-R-E-E-Z-E, Donald DeFreeze. He was born November the 5th, 1943, and he died May the 17th, 1974. See how he died as we go into this. He would then take on the name Senku Mtumi, also called Field Marshal Mtumi, and would lead what became, allegedly lead what became Symbionese Liberation Army, SYMBIONESE. And he would form this group along with a white woman named Patricia Solsky. And in fact, the only black person in the Symbionese Liberation Army as a member, there were others who helped form it with Senku. So Senku took the name of the Hindi warrior. Anthony Freeze took the name of the Hindi warrior, Senku, in 1839. A successful mutiny of 53 Africans aboard the slave ship Amistad, killing the captain and 2 crew members. There's a film on that. They say there's a background. Scotty, it's probably coming from, there's something there. I don't know what that is.
Okay, so, it's not me. I can mute if you want me to, but it's not me.
No, you can't mute. Stay on. People can hear you, so listen. So there is, I can hear it, but there's nothing I can do about it. Senku got the successful rebellion aboard the Amistad, killing the captain, 2 crew members. He was a member of the Poro Society, and Supreme Court ruled in favor of Senku. They ruled that he should be sent back to Africa. So you would think somebody in a group that's called Symbionese Liberation Army and naming himself Senku would be somebody yes again. So this is the group that would carry out operations against us. Not because by the time carried out, he was dead. And we'll see why in a minute. Now, Anthony Donald DeFreed had a background, and his background basically was that he was he had been abused as a child and was also put in a mental hospital, put in reform school for robbing a parking lot meter and stealing a car. And so as a result of that, he spent 2 years in reform school, and he described his experiences hell, loneliness, fear, and hatred. Hell, loneliness, fear, and hatred. So this is telling you that this is a person who's being manipulated by the state. Later, he becomes an informant for the Los Angeles Police Department under Detective R.G. Farwell of the Public Disorder Intelligence Unit Criminal Conspiracy Section. So you're seeing he's being tied to a intelligence unit of the LA Police Department. It's an echo. There's nothing to do about it. Listen to what we're saying. So this is the making of SYNQ. SYNQ is being made by the police and particularly the intelligence agency, in this case of the LA Police Department. He is given a license to commit crime. And as he commits crimes, he is constantly being given probation, never put in jail. And is basically because they're preparing him for something else. Eventually, by 1969, the detective R.G. Farwell, who managed him, the intelligence unit, said that he cut him loose because he was so crazy. I think there was another reason for cutting him loose. Because DeFreeze was imprisoned at Vacaville Prison, where he was placed under a person named Holston Westbrook. This is the real name of this person. He was a CIA operative in charge of experimental behavior modification. And so SYNQ, who had been a ward of the state as a child, is now being put into a special program at Vacaville Prison here in California. Also, while in prison, encouraged to organize a support group that would become the Vietnamese Liberation Army later. But that support group would get a lot of support from his handlers, particularly the one whose name we're not. So at Vacaville Prison, DeFreeze was placed in a unit normally allowed good behaving prisoners called trustees. DeFreeze did nothing to enable him to be a trustee. Is somebody who's on good behavior for a while. They get put into a unit like this, then it's a unit that's supervised because they're trusted. And DeFreeze was the last person to be treated as a trustee. But while in this unit, under minimal supervision, DeFreeze walks away. Double Cross is the one that takes him from Vacaville to what becomes a place where they organize the SLA, Vietnamese Liberation Army. What we know about Double Cross is the Double Cross was showing SYNQ film most of the time that he was working with him in the safe house in Berkeley, California. And that would tell you psyop specialists, psychological operations specialists. And they were building psychology, which had started in Vacaville, that he was going to be an actor, you know. But this is the guy that didn't even know who CQ was. So among the skills that double cross are his skills. He's demonstrating a skill to get into the heads of people, special kind of agent. DeFreeze, then called COINTELPRO, later named Colston Westbrook, double cross, who has another real name, and Robin Steiner as CIA informants. They were actually CIA organizers. So that's kind of background. SLA members, Little and members of the SLA, the indication that COINTELPRO was involved in this, so he had organized the group. So they may well have planned it. I don't know. But two SLA members were charged, Little and Romero, with assassinating the superintendent of Oakland schools, Marcus Foster. And he was the first Black superintendent of Oakland schools. And it's very difficult to figure out why would this group do this. And the only conclusion I can draw is because this group is a false flag group created by the CIA to appear to be a liberation group, and one that associates itself with certain symbols like others, trying to associate them with cultural nationalism. This was a cutout organization, a fake organization. It looked like it was a liberation group when it is designed to really make liberation groups look crazy. And so the only reason I killing Marcus Foster is that it made no sense, that it put the Symbionese Liberation Army in a position where it would be isolated from the community, which is what this operation was designed to do for groups, radical and white, in this country to make. I think that was the real. And guess who provided to Little and Hero? Marcus Foster, Double Cross. Double Cross got a $10,000 reward when he testified against them in court. You know? So this is kind of background for the Symbionese Liberation Army. The Symbionese Liberation Army kidnaps Patricia, daughter of Random, a multi-millionaire, an owner of a chain, and she is kidnapped. Liberation Army, being an active part in that, and later, Patricia Hearst, bank robberies, and the Symbionese trying to portray themselves freedom organization would take off her father distribute food in the Black community. So distribute East Palo Alto and in San Francisco. This was a part of their effort to make it look like their liberation organization. Now, one of the reasons the objective of Double Cross, the infiltration African Youth Organization, was to take the organization out of that. It's proved by what he did before. Because on May the 17th, 1974, the Symbionese Liberation Army, COINTELPRO being president, was burned alive in Los Angeles. Burned alive. Yeah, the sounds good, but we can't do it. So I hope people listen to it. You know, these things happen. And some of us, as somebody that watches TV, the same time. We should deal with it. I think you can hear what I'm saying. So the point is, this was a low intensity operation, and in this particular case, what's the reason for burning the Symbionese Liberation Army alive on TV? It's shown while it's being burned in Las Vegas. It's to tell you, you see, these organizers are crazy. And if you get involved in any kind of movement, this is crazy. And this is what's going to happen to you. That was the whole point. But it also proved what Cross, who managed not to be that good, set this up, what his intent was when he comes into the African People's Organization. So this is background for what happens. So double cross in around 1975 would attend African People's Organization meeting. This was his effort to infiltrate the African People's Organization. And I made listen a basic comment before about this, but we didn't know the context. But this was a meeting that Capo had 70 meetings. We'd have a couple of hundred people coming to the meeting. We'd feed people free food afterwards. And so in this particular meeting, we interview one person. Then after this person, who we call Double Cross, begins to engage in a dialogue. And his dialogue is very interesting because the dialogue was designed to try and appeal to the organization, but particularly appeal to me. The dialogue pushing a philosophy that was virtually nobody has a philosophy the same time. And so that alerted me right away. And so when I noticed this, I took notes. When the meeting opened, this person is going into the kitchen and beginning to hit on stuff. And saw that he had something that was going on that he could do with them. I already know there's a sound. There's nothing we can do. So listen. I already told people that. Y'all listen. So what ends up happening when Double Cross pulls this on, then I immediately alert some people in the organization that there's a problem. Scotty's one of the people that look at. There's something going on with this cat here. He's either the first person that's just like me, or there's something going on. Check it out. So it's at that point I typically ask you Scotty because of his good organizing, he's smart, and I also know he can pull in terms of what they think he's coming on with. He can come on with, well, yeah, I'm not much. There's not much going on with me, blah blah blah. So I tell Ustadi this, and Ustadi picks this up. So tell people what happens after this and how you handle this in the organization.
Okay, I'd just like to say, Brother Shaka, one of the reasons that they gave for killing Marcus Foster, the superintendent of school of Oakland Unified Schools District, was that at the same time he was asking for ID cards for the students. Right. And in South Africa under Smith, on apartheid, they was giving IDs out. So that was their thought process on that. Okay. In reference to Double Cross, Double Cross actually had came to the Unity House. I guess that's how, and then he came out to San Francisco State. talking to Thabiti. Thabiti was in a not a confrontation, but they was the I can't think of there was a I forget at San Francisco State they had a Jewish group. I forget the name of the group, but anyway, they was protesting in front of the library out there in San Francisco State, and Chris double cross double cross double cross went and was getting in people's faces, and Thabiti told him that's not our fight, you know, that's not our fight. So, but anyway, prior to me, we had took over the gang office. The gang office in San Francisco was actually a bungalow. That was before they had built the student union, and the bungalow all let me see, there was a La Raza, Pace. The Pace was the Filipino Association. There was the Chinese Association. There was the Native American Association, and then there was the BSU. So it wasn't getting too much action. So what we did, we actually took over. When I say took over, the gang office became the Black Student Union. We painted a door. We painted the door with Africa on that big old door. But we moved stuff, but we wasn't going to take anything that didn't belong to us, because they call that borrowing in some places. In some places, they call that possession of a property that's not belonged to. In other words, property. How do you say? There's a word for that in the police as possession of stolen goods. So I wasn't about to deal with it, but Double Cross, he wanted to do all those type of things, and that wasn't what we was there for. We was there for organizing education. So that was one thing. The other thing that really got us with Mr. Double Cross.
Hold on a minute. What that's telling you is this: Double Cross was infiltrating the organization because his handlers had told him some of the members are students in San Francisco State. So he's coming to a meeting, but he is, whether he's a student or not, he is out of state to form relationships with people who are in Papa. So he's assuming a cover as a student. Go ahead.
Correct, because he had already been to Papa, so he know who we were. He had that clear. At the same time, I'm laughing because I kind of know people who we told them they have to minimize their contradictions. Clarification on the word minimizing contradiction, talking black and sleeping white. So that was one of the first contradictions that we had to try to eliminate at San Francisco State, because some brothers would not even talk to you at that particular time because they were full of contradictions. So what happened was, in regards to Mr. Doublecross, Mr. Doublecross was caught in a situation that sister saw, and then he got caught in another situation, and and this situation, although Shaka said something, really put both our eyes on him. And that situation was, we have never ever saw a brother I tuck in a dashiki. If you have, there's something wrong. The brother was actually caught tucking in a dashiki by Daima Untungulizi. So when that happened, then Thabiti gave him the word that, look, man, you can't come back here. You can't come to Papo, because, we didn't say we smell a rat, but we know what infiltration was. We know what provocateurs was, and he had all the signs and of that. So that was one of the things that really. I mean, it's almost like I got a sign on me saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm the police," basically. If you know,
also you have reported the event and you've talked about it since then. This is Sister Naima, who you're referring to.
Yes.
Had come through orientation, who was suspicious of him tucking his diabetes into his shirt, but she was suspicious of him for other things.
And she
what are some of the things you learned about where he lived, everything else about it?
That was all on Daima knowing where he lived at. I'm not gonna say Daima was the police, but I'm laughing because Daima was in love with this Nigerian that she later married about 7 years later, and she was fearful of white women taking the Nigerian away from her. But so she kept an eye on all brothers and reported back to those who are in violation. And so it's kind of funny, but she found out where he was staying and who he was with, and so that's kind of ended that whole thing in
What was
regards
the
to.
key thing about where he was staying? What was that important to?
Say it again.
Where was he staying? Why was that important?
Oh, he was close to where Patty was. You know, she was our number one candidate for actually Patty Hearst. She was our number one candidate for since you jogging my memory. I remember me, Beatty, and I think it was Ray Tompkins. We was coming back from a basketball practice. I think we practiced every Wednesday, just keeping in shape. And the police pulled us over. I forgot about that one. You know what I'm saying? So, but I beat that. But either way, but I'm sorry.
Double crossed, according to you, you told me at the time, you told me since then, the sister here, Daima, determined that his claim Mr. Hearst, that was 2 blocks away from
Oh, you know it from right where she was. Right. You're correct. Yeah. That's true. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, but that was that and that just sealed the deal on not even having him around us. He couldn't come in there because one of the problems. Let me just say, when we changed the name from Black Student Union to Pan African Student Union, and at that time we wasn't our group wasn't our group, the Pan African Student Union, was very political, and so we didn't need no heat on us. Let's put it like that. The what's that? What's the lady name? Sandy Duffield. She was charge of AS. She was charge of students. She was charge of the associated students, um and she was always honest about violating rules. So for us to take anything, they already got their eyes on us. Everybody had their eyes on us. So for him to come in and want to steal stuff, want to do stuff, and associate with, he just brought more heat on us, and we was too smart to have that heat come on us like that. I mean, if we're going to do it.
What Ustadi is explaining here is that Double Cross was trying to steal stuff in the office, which they had what became the Pan African Student Union and other student groups. That's a part of what agents of Montpelier do. What they do is
Exactly.
into illegal activity. That's part of what they do. Double Cross was an agent of Montpelier, a psych ops specialist, and he was a low intensity operation operator at the highest level. And so that was just high-tech stuff that was going on with the Pan African students. The main thing is that because of Mr. Daima, because of me, I knew the markers of low intensity operations, and then because of the investigation of the study and others, but mainly Daima, we were able to uncover the fact that this guy's SLA.
And also, Shaka, you got to remember, it was a very thin line between the San Francisco State community and what was happening in the community, because we was in the community. You know, we was back and forth. It wasn't like a big this gap.
Right.
You know, it wasn't no gap. It was whatever we would actually bring the community on to San Francisco State, because we had the speaking bureau. So therefore, that we had Dr. Clark here, we had him there, and then we had him at the Unity House too. So we had that relationship going.
Right. Yeah, so the point is, that was uncovering who he was. After that, we blew his cover. We had choices about what we could do. Basically, we blew his cover, and he disappeared. The point is, had we not done this work, had we not had conscious people in the organization, whose eyes were alert, were looking at things, had we not had somebody that knew what low intensity operations is.
Exactly.
98% of organizers today don't know what it is. Had we not had that, we'd all be ghosts.
Exactly.
And this is a short show. So apparently that sounds coming through my background. I don't know what that is. But the key point is we were prepared in different ways. So don't focus on one thing. Oh, we had his shirt up there. No, it was a lot more than that. And so usually when you're dealing with an agent, you often don't know who that agent is. Very often the person you suspect is the agent. So don't think it. And so an indication of how to shut something down. This was shut down before it could happen. And this
He had
saved
3 strikes.
from being done in. Yeah, so
So
that's
those strikes add up. That's all I'm saying to you. The
yeah,
strikes add up. And at that time, we was really thinking about minimizing contradiction within us.
right.
So, you really paying attention. That's the key. But you, first of all, you got to know what you're trying to minimize.
Right. So there he's saying that between talking black, sleeping white, contradictions in your life, not being consistent in your African thought, and that is where they can come at you. And a lot of the group got shut down. They got shut down because they had contradictions. Some of them were robbing somebody off the job. They're in the group during the day and robbing somebody. You can't have that. And that's the way they want to take you out. So this of this, if you think um, you get it, but that's basically what low intensity operations that failed because we had some work.
Yeah, there's traps. They said traps, but if you don't know the traps, you're gonna fall for the traps. And that's why I would always say, you have to distinguish the real from the unreal. And what is your prime objective? Is your prime objective to get something free? Things ain't free. Is your prime objective to try to get something that's gonna cause disharmony amongst the people in the organization and the organization, to bring negative vibes to the organization, or to try to bring negative publicity to the organization, and you're trying to do something positive for the people? Now, although the contradictions that you have to know, because you are the organization.
And I think we should also know the case of Daima. She's an example of how sisters are carriers of culture.
Exactly.
Pick up on some stuff sometimes the brothers don't pick up on.
I agree.
And feel some things sometimes you don't feel. So that's the other side of that. So while she wasn't trained in low intensity operations, she was trained in what Negroism is and what it means for a Negro to try and pass as an African. And she could see. And so that's what led her on her. So that's the key part. So, the title of the show was COINTELPRO Low Intensity Operations, the art of detecting spies or agents. So this is an art.
Yeah, you're right, Chuck.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're right, because it's little things, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna give a lot of respect to the sisters, because Jabari, he was in the organization. Now we made Jabari for freshmen who coming in there that stayed in the dorm. We was getting so many negative complaints on what was happening in the dorm that we made him part of the security to deal with the dorms, because the sister was telling us what was happening. So we have to give the counterparts just as much information. And Daima, Brenda, they used to come back and give me all the information. So because we was conscious. That's the other side of the coin.
Yeah, that's the key. The key point here is, if you have an organization and you don't have systematizing consciousness, good luck. Remember, luck is German God. So if you are putting your faith in the hands of people, you don't want to put your faith in the hands of. So consciousness, this is the last show how culture, African American culture, each of the deacons being avoid infiltration. This is showing you the consciousness over one level, which you're trained in this, on another level, which you see as established contradictions that tell you somebody one way and doing something else. And so it would lead a Daisha to think, well, what else is wrong with this? And so all of that, because that's the key thing. Low intensity operation has to be shut down early. It has to be shut down.
Not only do it has to be shut down, you must be on your guards at all time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very important.
Okay, that was good. So, anything else you'd like to say in conclusion, Mr.
Now, the only thing I like to say is that it's the sixfold stages of consciousness is very important, because some people they can't express or understand what's happening to them until they look back and somebody inform them what happened. And I think that's because I've been with people and they can tell me they never been discriminated against, and then I start running and say, oh yeah, that happened. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's very important that people do join to learn the 6 stages, so they can see, well, let's say hindsight is 50-50, but with consciousness, hindsight is 20-20, but if with some consciousness brought, it might be even better than you thought it was.
Well put. Well put. Okay, let's go to questions here or comments. Devil's advocate of thinking. Do you think the CIA and FBI is going to be involved in the forming of the 6th region of the African Union? And yes, how so? What should we watch for? And how should we deal with it? Devil's advocate is referring to the fact that the African Union has set up a 6th region. Is that better? Yeah. Has set up a 6th region in which Africans in the diaspora can be a part of the African Union. And so he's saying, how can you deal with CIA, FBI administration? I would think it's almost given that, yes, you'll face it. And the best thing you can do is have organizations who are involved in this, who have a process for shaping members who are consistent in their thoughts and their actions, and for people who are serious to police this thing and look at it and check it out. Watch it, check it out. But yes, there definitely will be, because this country does not want any cooperation between Africans in the U.S. and African continent, unless it's house Negro things. You got anything to say on that, everybody?
Yes. The person you dealing with have been trained thoroughly in psychops, low intensity, all that. So if you go in there just with your eyes closed, you're in trouble. They already. I give you an example. Shaka, we didn't even speak about this, but even when we did Black United Front, and I went to Grenada, CIA was all around us when we was having our meetings. You see what I'm saying? So you got to be trained, man. I mean, I know you can't train everybody, but you got to have some eyes. You got to, if you got 100 people, you need at least 60 eyes, and them 60 can deal with the 40. But if you only got 20 eyes, let me clarify the word eye. People who are trained. If you only got 20 of them, and you got 80 of the other, then you're gonna lose automatically.
Yeah, well put. Okay, let's see what we have here. Kurt Thomas. Okay. There's a question here from Brother Shabazz. What was the relationship between Latinos and African Americans? Did Latinos pull their own weight? Scotty?
Where at state?
Did
Oh yeah, let me explain that to you. Let me. Okay, now this is a different time, but when we was out there, we there was 22,000 people on the university campus, and they had 1,500 black people. The first time we ran for a slate, that means that we were running for president, vice president, treasurer, speaker of the ledge, and all of the houses, all those disciplines, like black studies, BSS, and all that. But what happened the first time, we just ran all black, so we just made people a conscience. But the second time we came out with La Raza, we came out with SDS white folk. So yes, the La Raza was with us. They was, matter of fact, they was in the basement. When we was in the basement, we had the Pan African Student Union had the largest thing, and La Raza was right next to us. And then yeah, they supported us. We was together. There wasn't no problem with that. When I was out of state, wasn't no problem at all.
okay.
Matter of fact, we won the president, vice president, treasurer. We ran the whole thing out of 22,000, and we only had 1,500 blacks. But we had to get the support of all the rest of people of color.
Okay, Senator, I see what you're doing here, but I need to move this thing so I can get the questions here. Let's see if there's anything. Okay, 5-star review. I learned a lot of the U.S. Army. I did the communication for the White House, and that is all I will say. Can you hear me? Scotty,
I can hear you now, sir.
okay. All right, let's go back here. That was my computer man trying to improve the sound here. Still hear stuff in the background. Oh, jeez. Can you still hear me, Scotty?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay. me see if I can go. I don't think he's been able to correct this very much. See if there's any other questions here. Yeah, well, it's not. Let's just close on this. It's just taking us out, and you're not improving it. I don't know what's wrong. It's mine that's been making the funny sound. Not who started. So just go out and let me just shut this down. I'm going to end it myself. When you end it, just get off the screen. Okay, let's see if there's any other comments here. There's a question here. How did the CIA have jurisdiction to arrest us in Tanzania? The CIA didn't do it. They manipulated the government. Certain weak links in the government. They're the ones that did it. And I went to the Sixth Pan-African Congress a couple of weeks before the Congress because I expected some mess. And sure enough, this was part of their mess. There was other stuff they were trying to do as well. So, and that's how that worked. Kurt Thomas, quite as it's kept, the white elite are staging a revolution right now, trying to eliminate the power of the judiciary branch of government. Really? Stout, you got any comment on that?
January 6th. That's it.
What I'd say is, I mean, if you're looking at the judicial branch of government, the judicial branch of government is the most backward right now. Look at the decisions they're making. Look at the decisions on a woman's right to choose. Look at their decision on stripping the voting rights bill of its teeth. Look at a decision that's hanging in the court right now, where they could possibly reach a decision where state could have the final say so on people's rights, period. And states' rights was the basis for slavery. So I would say that while there's a right wing that's operating outside of the Supreme Court is definitely playing its role. Let's see. Okay. Let's see if there's any on the bottom. Okay, that's that looks like it's it. So I hope people were able to pick this up. It looks like it was on my side where you had the problem with that sound in the background. But I hope people were listening because I know we're projecting our voices. I hope people got it. So this is an important show. I really want to thank you, Scotty, you know,
You're
for
welcome,
sharing
sir.
your wisdom, right on. And everybody else. Hotep until next week.
Hotep.